Welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're going to uncover something totally fascinating, that invisible narrator running constantly inside your head. You know the one. From the exact moment you wake up to the second you finally fall asleep, there's a voice talking to you. Sometimes it's like this super helpful coach, right? But other times, well, it's a remarkably harsh critic. So, today we're going to look closely at the psychology of this inner voice, understand exactly where it comes from, and, most importantly, learn how to actually tame it.
Actually, I want you to pause for just a second. Seriously, what is your mind telling you right now, in this exact moment? Are you maybe judging how fast I'm talking? Are you stressing out about an email you got to send later? Or are you telling yourself you're ready to learn something new? The really mind-blowing thing here is that you are quite literally listening to a silent conversation right now just to interpret the words I'm saying.
Okay, let's dive into this. The formal psychological term for this is self-talk. And listen, this isn't just some random background noise. It's an endless inner conversation that deeply shapes your emotions, your behavior, and even your identity over time. Because here's the thing, human beings do not experience reality directly. I'm actually going to repeat that because it's absolutely massive. We do not experience reality directly. We experience it through the interpretation of this constant mental voice. I mean, think about it. Two people can face the exact same difficult challenge. One thinks, man, this is impossible, while the other thinks, okay, this will be hard, but I can grow from it. The physical situation is identical, but their psychological reality, entirely different.
Let's move into Section 1, Origins of the Inner Critic, How We Got Here.
Now, if your inner voice is exceptionally harsh, you really need to know that it isn't entirely your fault. A huge chunk of it was absorbed early on. Think of a child's brain like a highly sensitive recording device. It learns through emotional repetition. So if a kid is repeatedly called lazy, they don't just hear that word. Over time, they actually begin to believe laziness is a core part of their identity. If they're constantly criticized for making mistakes, their adult brain will instinctively replay, "Don't try, you're going to embarrass yourself," whenever they face a new challenge. But on the flip side, if they were encouraged to try again after failing, they develop this deep, incredible psychological resilience. Basically, those external voices of parents, teachers, and peers eventually cross over and become our permanent internal programming.
Which brings us to Section 2, the silent destroyer, the mechanics of sabotage.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how completely different these two mental states are. Unlike external criticism that you can just walk away from, negative self-talk follows you literally everywhere. Notice the stark contrast here. On one side, we have a mind just endlessly repeating, "I always fail," and "I'm not good enough." On the other side, we have a mind repeating, "I am capable and I can improve." And guys, these aren't just passing thoughts. They are self-fulfilling prophecies. Your brain listens so carefully to what you tell it. Over time, it just accepts these repeated mental statements as absolute truth, whether they're actually accurate or not. And that dictates entirely different behaviors and life outcomes based entirely on which mental environment you're living in.
And that brings us to a really critical psychological mechanism, confirmation bias. You've probably heard of it. It's the process where your brain only searches for evidence that supports your existing beliefs while actively ignoring contrary facts. So if your self-talk is telling you, "I'm socially awkward," your brain is going to put a massive spotlight on every single slightly awkward pause in a conversation. Meanwhile, it completely deletes the memory of the 3 times you made people laugh out loud earlier that day. Your brain is literally filtering reality to match your inner voice. How wild is that?
And unfortunately, that filtering traps you in this vicious downward spiral. Let's walk through exactly how this downward spiral maps out. Step 1, you have a negative thought, something like, "I'm going to mess this up." Step 2, that thought immediately triggers a negative emotion, usually anxiety or fear. Then step 3, you act on that fear through avoidance, hesitation, or just poor execution, which leads right into step 4. You get a negative result, mostly because you weren't performing at your best. And finally, step 5, that negative result reinforces the original thought. So now you've got an even stronger negative belief for the next time around. It's basically a perfect self-reinforcing engine of self-sabotage.
Now, a major fuel source for all that sabotage is something called catastrophic thinking. This is the unconscious exaggeration of negative outcomes. Basically, your inner critic starts creating these extreme, absolute scenarios. Say you make one tiny mistake at work and your brain instantly goes, "Well, that's it. If I fail this once, my career's ruined and everyone's going to think I'm a fool forever." It takes a temporary moment of discomfort and magnifies it into an absolute life-ending disaster. And of course, that just unnecessarily spikes your anxiety right through the roof.
Moving on to Section 3, Imagination versus Reality, the Mind-Body Connection.
There's a totally fascinating biological reality about how our brain processes these catastrophic thoughts. So the crucial point is this.
The human brain cannot always separate imagination from reality. It physically reacts to imagined situations as if they were actually happening right in front of you. If you repeatedly imagine humiliation, rejection, or failure, you're literally training your nervous system to expect real physical danger. Just thinking about failure triggers actual physical stress, tension, and hesitation in your body, even when you're just sitting perfectly safe on the couch in your living room.
Let me give you a perfect, real-world example of this in action. Imagine two employees who receive the exact same piece of constructive criticism from their manager. Employee 1 instantly thinks, "I'm terrible at my job," and they get hit with this wave of deep shame, insecurity, and low energy. But Employee 2, they think, "Okay, this feedback can actually help me improve," and they experience motivation, growth, and resilience. The external event, the manager's words, was completely identical. It's the internal interpretation that completely changed the emotional and physical outcome. Because events don't control your emotions, your internal interpretation does.
All right, let's get to the good stuff. Section 4. Rewriting your mental language, taking control.
The really good news here is that you are absolutely not stuck with the inner voice you have today. Because the brain remains adaptable throughout our entire lives, we can actually physically rewire these neural pathways through awareness and repetition. And this brilliantly illustrates how we start that process. When an automatic negative thought pops up like, "I always fail," you don't just ignore it. Instead, you actively challenge it with a rational replacement like, "I have failed before, but I've also succeeded and improved." Notice that we aren't using toxic, unrealistic positivity here. We're not pretending perfection exists. The goal isn't to be blindly optimistic. It's to develop balanced, intelligent thinking that directly challenges the extreme nature of your automatic negative patterns.
Now, a huge part of making this rational replacement work is practicing self-compassion. And I know, so many people believe that if they aren't harshly criticizing themselves, they're just going to lose all their discipline. But psychology shows us the exact opposite is true. Excessive shame literally destroys your motivation and creates emotional paralysis. Self-compassion, which just means accepting imperfection and actually learning from your mistakes, is not weakness at all. It is high-level emotional intelligence. It's what allows you to respond to your errors intelligently and maintain your emotional balance instead of just emotionally collapsing after every single setback.
Let's move to and see how this builds into practical, everyday action. Modern life is completely full of mental noise, right? Social media, the 24-hour news cycle, constant comparison, all of this overloads the mind and breeds negative self-talk. To combat this, you need practical, actionable exercises. First, start a thought awareness journal to catch your recurring negative thoughts. Next, actively replace extreme language. Literally ban the words always and never from your internal vocabulary. Third, use daily confidence statements like, "I can handle discomfort." Also, make a habit of speaking to yourself exactly the way you would speak to a good friend who's struggling. And finally, actively limit your exposure to highly negative environments that just feed that inner critic.
I really want to leave you with this incredibly powerful realization from our sources today. Every thought plants a psychological seed. Repeated thoughts grow into beliefs. Beliefs shape identity. Identity shapes destiny. Let that sink in for a second. Your brain physically becomes what it repeatedly hears. Look, one single positive thought isn't going to magically create unshakable confidence, just like doing one workout isn't going to make you an Olympic athlete. But healthy mental conditioning, repeated consistently over time, that will literally reshape who you are and what you are truly capable of achieving. Which brings us to the final and really the most crucial question you have to ask yourself. Will you be an enemy or a supportive guide to your own mind? Because real confidence begins the exact moment you decide to stop battling yourself and start guiding yourself. Remember, the most important conversation you will ever have in your entire life is the silent one happening inside your head right now. So, let's make it a good one. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.